There is a collection somewhere in your garden that you have never seen. Not inside the house, not in the shed. Somewhere outside, under a loose tile, wedged into a gap in the fence, tucked beneath the roots of something you planted years ago, there are objects. Small ones, a button, a piece of foil pressed flat, a fragment of something bright and smooth. Things that did not arrive by wind or accident. They were carried there, deliberately, one by one, and some of them were meant for you. You may never have found them. That is not the point. The point is that the magpie in your garden has been keeping two kinds of things, the things it keeps for itself and the things it keeps near you. The difference between those two piles tells you something about what that bird thinks of you. Most people, when they find something, a scrap of silver on the step, a bead beside the feeder, assume the wind, assume coincidence, dismiss it in 30 seconds, and go back inside. If you are watching this, I suspect you did not dismiss it. You were right not to. Welcome to Garden Bird Secrets. If you're new here, subscribe. Because what you're about to learn will change every morning you spend in your garden. There are 5 things I want to take you through. What this behavior is, why it happens, what the magpie is actually doing when it does it, and what it says about the relationship it has built with you. Stay until the end, because the final point is the one that will change the way you think about every object that bird has ever placed near you. For centuries, the British story about magpies and shiny objects has been one of theft. The bird takes, the button disappears, the ring goes missing from the windowsill. An entire opera was built on the premise, La Gazza Ladra, the thieving magpie. But here is what the research actually found. Magpies are not thieves, they are givers. What people saw and misread was a corvid placing something near a human. The story was told the wrong way round. This is something British people have felt for centuries. Now we have language for why. Let's begin with something important. This is not folklore. It is not wishful thinking. It is a behavior that has been documented, studied, and written about in the scientific literature on corvid cognition for decades. Before we go further, it is worth being clear about what kind of bird we are actually talking about. The magpie is not a crow. It is not a raven. But it is a member of the same family, Corvidae, one of the most cognitively sophisticated groups of birds on the planet. And that family membership matters because when researchers study one Corvidae species and find something remarkable, they look across the family. And they find it again. And again. The same capacity. Different bird, same result. Some of the research you are about to hear was conducted on crows, some on ravens. Your magpie is not those birds, but it is their close relative. And in the science of bird intelligence, that is not a small thing. That is the whole point. Corvids, the family of birds that includes crows, rooks, ravens, jackdaws, and our magpie, leave objects near humans they know. Not always, not every individual, but with enough consistency and with enough specificity about which humans that researchers took notice. John Marsluff and Tony Angel, the ornithologists at the University of Washington, whose work on corvid intelligence has shaped much of what we now understand about these birds, documented this behavior across multiple corvid species. The pattern was always the same. An individual bird that had a regular, positive relationship with a specific human would, on occasion, place an object near that person. Not near the feeder. Not near the garden in general. Near that person. In your garden, this means if a magpie has left something near you, near the step where you stand, near the chair where you sit, near the door you use, the placement was not random. There was a target, and the target was you. In Seattle, there is a family with a garden, and for several years, a young girl in that family, 8 years old when it began, had a habit of dropping food for the crows on her way to and from the school bus. She didn't do it as an experiment. She did it because she liked crows. Over time, the crows began to leave things behind. a small piece of black glass polished by water, a rusted bolt, a white button, a strip of silver foil folded in half, a tiny blue plastic rectangle from something she couldn't identify. Each object was placed in the dish where she put their food, not scattered, not dropped, set down. The researchers who studied what was happening, including Maslow's team at the University of Washington, were struck not just by the behavior itself, but by its consistency and specificity. The objects were brought to this particular family, not to neighbors, not to the house next door, to them. I want you to sit with that for a moment. Not a laboratory, not a controlled experiment. A child who was kind to crows. And a response, deliberate, repeated, addressed, from the birds themselves. If you have ever found something in your garden that you couldn't explain, that precision is exactly what you are encountering. Now, the question that matters, why? It would be easy, and wrong, to say the magpie feels gratitude in the way a human feels gratitude. That is not what the science supports. But what the science does support is something that may be more striking in its own way. Researchers at the University of Vienna, Claudia Wascher and Thomas Bugniar, working with ravens closely related to our corvids, demonstrated something in 2013 that had previously been considered characteristic of primates and cetaceans, but not birds. Reciprocal altruism. Corvids track who has helped them. They maintain what researchers described as a kind of social ledger, an ongoing record of which individuals have behaved cooperatively toward them and which have not, and they respond in kind. Help given is help returned. Across time, across interactions, in a way that is statistically well above chance. In your garden, this means every time you put food out, every time you move slowly and without threat, every time you give that magpie what it needs, you are writing your name into a record you cannot see. A record the magpie keeps. The object on your doorstep is not random generosity, it is a response. And it is addressed to you specifically because you have built up a balance in a ledger you didn't know existed. Here is the detail that, for me, changes everything about this. The objects corvids bring are not random. They are not whatever happened to be lying nearby. Research by Kaylee Swift, a corvid researcher at the University of Washington who has spent years studying exactly this, found that the objects selected tend to share certain qualities. They are often bright, unusual, or visually striking. Things that stand out, things that catch the eye. And here is what that means. Corvids collect these objects for themselves. They are drawn to them, keep them, sometimes hoard them. These are things the bird has identified, by its own assessment, according to its own sense of what has worth, as valuable. Stay with me, because this next part changes everything. When a magpie places one of these objects near you, it is not giving you something it found discarded. It is not giving you something it doesn't want. It is giving you something it kept. The scrap of foil, the bright bead, the small piece of glass. These are the things your magpie considered worth holding on to, and it chose to put one of them near you. You can draw your own conclusion from that. I won't draw it for you, but I would ask you not to be too quick to dismiss what that gesture represents. Think about everything that has to happen before a magpie leaves something near you. It has to recognize your face, specifically from among every other person who moves through this part of the world. We covered that in the first video. It does this. We know it does. It has to file you as safe. Not neutral. Safe. The assessment that takes time, that involves watching you from distance, that requires you to pass a series of tests you weren't aware you were sitting. It has to build a record of you, your patterns, your presence, whether your behavior toward it has been consistent, whether you can be trusted across seasons and not just on a single morning. And then, after all of that, it has to cross a final threshold. One that, in the research literature, appears to be rare. Not every corvid that knows a human well will bring them something. The gift is not automatic, it is a choice, which means the object on your doorstep, however small, however ordinary it might look in your hand, is not the beginning of something. It is the end of something. The end of a process that started the first morning that Magpie landed on your fence, looked at you, and made a quiet decision about who you were. Everything since then has been accumulation. Recognition built into assessment, assessment built into trust, trust built across seasons, until one morning in the early quiet when you weren't there to see it, something was taken from what the bird kept for itself and placed near you instead. That is what a gift looks like, in the language of a corvid. Not grand, not announced. Set down quietly and left. If you have ever stood in your garden and felt the particular weight of being watched, genuinely, specifically watched, the science gives you permission to trust that feeling. And if something has ever appeared near you, placed with a care that made you pause before you picked it up, hold on to that pause. Because that pause was the correct response. That pause was you recognizing something true. Tell me in the comments, what did you find and where, and what did you think in the moment you found it? I read every single one. These are the stories I carry with me longest. I'll see you in the garden.